President Donald Trump and his closest allies are pinning the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk on what they describe as the radical left, while remaining conspicuously silent about the far-right rhetoric that has dominated political discourse in recent months. In a series of public comments since the incident, Trump has laid blame squarely on left-wing groups and individuals, portraying the violence as part of a broader ideological threat. At the same time, he has avoided acknowledging the role right-wing extremism and inflammatory language within his own movement may have played in fueling a climate of hostility. The narrative has quickly become a flashpoint in Washington, intensifying already heated debates about political violence, accountability, and the weaponization of rhetoric in America's bitterly divided landscape. In the Oval Office, Trump described the suspect in Kirk's killing as someone who had been radicalized over the internet, emphasizing that the radicalization came on the left. His comments echoed his frequent claims that movements such as Antifa pose a grave danger to the country. "He's a left," Trump said, repeating the label in simple but sweeping terms. "A lot of problems with the left, and they get protected, and they shouldn't be protected." The president went further, suggesting he was considering designating certain left-leaning groups as domestic terrorist organizations, a move that has been floated in the past but never formally carried out. These remarks fit a familiar pattern for Trump, who has long sought to highlight left-wing unrest, particularly during moments of national crisis, while downplaying or outright ignoring the violence that emerges from his own political base. The day before, Trump struck the same note with reporters. "When you look at the problem is on the left," he said. "It's not on the right." For critics, this selective framing was not surprising, but no less alarming. Throughout his presidency and beyond, Trump has routinely characterized the left as dangerous, destructive, and out of control, while resisting calls to denounce right-wing actors who have engaged in acts of intimidation or violence. That tendency has drawn scrutiny at key moments. From his reaction to the 2017 Charlottesville rally, when he insisted there were very fine people on both sides, to his handling of the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, when he offered muted condemnation of rioters who openly identified with his movement. In this latest case, Trump's words have once again revealed a broader strategy: define political violence as a leftist phenomenon while shielding his own supporters from equal condemnation. Vice President JD Vance, who has emerged as one of Trump's most outspoken defenders, echoed the president's rhetoric in particularly striking fashion. Hosting Kirk's own podcast only hours after the activist's death, Vance sought to draw a clear line between the two sides of the political spectrum. While our side of the aisle certainly has its crazies, it is a statistical fact that most of the lunatics in American politics today are proud members of the far left, Vance declared. His framing, which sought to minimize right-wing extremism as a fringe while portraying the left as overwhelmingly dangerous, underscored the administration's coordinated messaging effort. By speaking directly to Kirk's audience, Vance both consoled grieving conservatives and hardened the perception that Kirk's death was proof of leftist aggression rather than part of a more complex landscape of political violence. Yet the reaction within Republican leadership has been more cautious, revealing the party's struggle to navigate Trump's dominance over its narrative. Senate Majority Leader John Thune declined to fully endorse Trump's rhetoric when pressed by reporters. Asked whether the president should also denounce right-wing political violence, Thune responded carefully, "The president can speak for himself." His reluctance to criticize Trump directly highlighted the tension many GOP leaders face, balancing loyalty to the former president with the awareness that the party's credibility could be undermined if it appears blind to extremism within its own ranks. Thune did, however, offer a broader appeal, urging Americans to respect differing views and engage in debates without inciting violence. His measured tone stood in contrast to Trump's more combative style, suggesting unease within the party about the potential political fallout of such one-sided blame. House Speaker Mike Johnson also sidestepped direct criticism of Trump. When asked whether the president should extend his condemnation to right-wing attacks, Johnson replied, "I think the president has been very clear in condemning violence." The answer was evasive, pointing to a pattern of Republican leaders avoiding explicit challenges to Trump's narrative. Johnson, like Thune, seemed unwilling to open a rift within the party at a time when Trump's grip on the GOP remains firm. But critics argue that silence in moments like these effectively enables Trump's selective framing, allowing partisan blame to overshadow a fuller reckoning with the causes of political violence in the United States. Democratic leaders, meanwhile, have wasted no time in calling out what they see as a dangerous deflection. Several prominent Democrats have argued that Trump's refusal to confront far-right extremism directly only emboldens those who traffic in violent rhetoric. They point to recent threats against Democratic lawmakers, episodes of intimidation at polling stations, and the spread of conspiracy theories online as evidence that the danger is not confined to the left. To them, Trump's one-sided blame risks deepening polarization and creating a false narrative that ignores half the problem. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a frequent critic of the administration, said in a televised interview, "The president has a responsibility to the entire country. By refusing to call out extremism when it comes from his side, he is sending a message that it's acceptable. And that puts every single one of us at greater risk." Experts on political extremism and radicalization also note that Trump's framing is at odds with recent data. Studies from the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and independent watchdog groups have consistently found that right-wing extremist groups are responsible for a significant share of political violence in the U.S. over the past decade. While left-wing violence has occurred, particularly during moments of unrest, it has not matched the scale or lethality associated with far-right actors. By insisting the problem lies almost exclusively on the left, Trump is not only ignoring these findings, but also contributing to what analysts describe as a dangerous misperception. When leaders distort the reality of where the threats are coming from, it makes it harder for law enforcement and communities to respond effectively, said Michael German, a former FBI agent who now studies extremism. It politicizes an issue that should be treated as a matter of public safety. The political stakes are particularly high given Charlie Kirk's prominence in conservative circles. As the founder of Turning Point USA, Kirk was one of the most influential voices of young conservatism, closely aligned with Trump and frequently amplifying the president's messaging. His death has been a profound shock to many on the right, not only because of his visibility, but because of what he represented, a new generation of conservative activism deeply intertwined with Trump's brand of politics. The rush to frame his killing as evidence of left-wing extremism reflects both the grief of his allies and the strategic importance of shaping public perception. By linking Kirk's death to their long-standing narrative of radical left violence, Trump and his allies are attempting to reinforce a storyline that benefits them politically, especially as the nation heads into a contentious election season. Still, not all conservatives are embracing this narrative without question. Some commentators on the right have privately expressed concern that focusing exclusively on left-wing violence risks alienating moderates who want leaders to address all forms of extremism. Conservative columnist David French, for example, has warned that downplaying right-wing threats while amplifying left-wing incidents creates a distorted picture that undermines trust. On social media, a handful of conservative voices have called for more balanced acknowledgement, with one prominent commentator writing, "If we want to be credible, we have to condemn violence across the board. Otherwise, we're just playing politics with tragedy." These dissenting views remain marginal within the broader conservative movement, but they suggest an undercurrent of unease with the selective framing coming from the very top. The broader public response has been divided along predictable partisan lines. Supporters of Trump and Kirk have embraced the narrative of leftist radicalization, flooding social media with demands for action against groups like Antifa. Hashtags calling for justice and accountability trended on conservative platforms, with some users directly tying Kirk's death to broader grievances about cultural and political battles. On the other side, progressives and Democrats have decried what they see as a cynical exploitation of tragedy. Many have argued that the refusal to acknowledge right-wing threats is not just hypocritical, but actively dangerous. Given the ongoing climate of harassment, doxing, and threats that many left-leaning activists and politicians face, the clash has further entrenched the perception that even in moments of tragedy, America's political divide leaves little room for shared understanding.